Hello, hello, hello. The Linux Mensch. I am Neofetch. Is Neofetch dead? Well, today I'm going to talk about it. Now, I'm a month late. And everyone in the Linux YouTube world has done a video about Neofetch, and there's a lot of blogs about it. So even though I'm a month late, I'm going to talk about it. So, let's get to it. So right now, I'm in my bare metal computer, the one I do all my recording in. And I'm in Arch Linux with the awesome window manager. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my virtual machines. And I have a virtual machine here open of Linux Mint Debian. And I'm doing this for a reason I'm going to tell you after the fact. So first of all, we can see there's updates to do. And if you click it on, we can see there's 8 updates. So I'm going to click it on. And these are all the updates to do. Now there's no kernel update, so I won't have to reboot it. And now my helper is here, Hope. She likes to come here and sit in front of the camera, and I don't throw her down or lock her out of the room. I just let her do what she wants to do. So I could do the updates here, but you know what? I'm going to close this, and I'm going to go into the terminal and update in the terminal. So I'm going to make this full screen, and let's do sudo apt update. Put my password in, and there's 52 packages to update. Well, now you're probably wondering, why is there 52 when the GUI said there was 8? Well, because when you update Debian or Debian-based distro in the terminal, it counts a lot of the files that go with the update as packages or files, if you know what I mean. Let's just take a look here. So we can see Firefox getting updated, LibreOffice, Thunderbird, and these programs have a lot of files that help them to run. So when you update in the terminal in a Debian distribution, it counts all the files that help those apps to run as separate files. So that's why it says 52 here. But really, it's only 8 packages that are being updated. Anyways, that's besides the point. So let's do sudo apt upgrade. And of course, you don't have to do this. You can update in the GUI, but I like to do things in terminal. And of course, you're wondering, what does this have to do with Neofetch? I'm going to tell you. So let's hit enter. And this is updating. Okay, so while this is updating, I'm going to leave my virtual machine. I'm going to go back to my real bare metal computer, which is running Arch Linux with the awesome window manager. Okay, so now we're here. And what I want to do is open up Firefox. Now I already have it open just to save time. So I'm going to go to workspace 6 and I have it open at the GitHub repository for Neofetch. And you can see, whoops, right here it says this repository has been archived by the owner on April 26, 2024. It is now read-only. So this repository for Neofetch was archived a month ago. There can be no more commits to it. But if we scan here, and I just got to make sure my face is not blocking it, and it's not good. If you look right here where my mouse is, the last release is 7.1.0, and it was released August 2nd, 2020. So there hasn't been an update to Neofetch in almost 4 years. So now some people are saying that Neofetch is dead. You have to go and find an alternative. And even some people are saying that you shouldn't use Neofetch anymore because it's not being updated and you could get a virus or a malware. People are saying you're going to be vulnerable to a virus or a malware if you continue using Neofetch because it's not being updated. Well, I don't think that's true. Now, the thing is that I'm not a cybersecurity expert, so I could be wrong. So what I'm going to say, take it with a grain of salt. Now, I don't think that if you continue using Neofetch, you're going to be at a security risk because it's just a program that tells you what's in your system. Now, I do think that for sure, you should not be using a web browser that is no longer getting updates because your web browser gets security updates and you shouldn't be using an old web browser. And I would say the same thing for the terminal. You shouldn't be using a terminal emulator if it's no longer receiving updates because, like for me, I use my terminal emulator to update my system, to download packages, to remove packages. And because your terminal emulator has direct contact with the internet and you're downloading and removing packages and updates, you should not be using a terminal emulator or a web browser that is no longer receiving updates. Now you might say, yeah, but Neofetch runs in the terminal. That's true. Neofetch does run in the terminal, but Neofetch is not reaching out into the outside world to download packages. So, like I said, take this with a grain of salt, and like I said, I'm not a security expert or a cybersecurity expert, but I think it's still safe to continue using Neofetch, but take that with a grain of salt. As for me, I'm still using Neofetch. And like I said, Neofetch hasn't had an update in almost 4 years. And until last month, everyone was fine with using Neofetch. All the Linux YouTubers were using Neofetch and they were fine with it. All of a sudden, because the repository has been archived, they're like, ooh, don't use Neofetch. You better switch to another package. Well, I don't know if that's true. But anyways, I'm going to continue using it. Now, there might come a time when Neofetch is removed from the Linux distribution repositories. And even if it's removed from the repositories, you will still be able to use it, but you won't be able to install it if you do a new install on your computer. So even if it's removed from the repositories and you already have it in your system, you have it. You'll be able to use it. But if you format your hard drive and you do a new install, or you buy a new computer and do a fresh install, then you won't be able to use it. Okay? Now, I'm also going to show you something else. So we see here the most current release is 7.1.0 on August 2nd, 2020. So now I'm going to go to Arch Linux. So we can see in Arch Linux, the most current release of Neofetch was May 19th, 2023, which is a year ago. How can that be? And look at this. It's 7.1.0-2. Now, if we go back to GitHub, so their release is 7.1.0. The Arch Linux is 7.1.0-2. So you might be wondering, well, how come Arch Linux has a current version that's only a year old and the other ones are 4 years old? Well, the thing about Arch Linux is sometimes if there's something that the developers see that's not running properly with Arch, they will put a point or a -2 in there. And they do that with the kernels. So for instance, right now I'm on kernel.org, and all the distributions take these kernels and use them in their distributions. Sometimes the distributions will change the kernel a little bit so that it works better with their system. And sometimes I think they just may use it the way it is. But anyways, Arch Linux follows all these kernels. So Arch Linux, officially, they have the stable kernel and the long-term support kernel, the most current long-term support kernel. And now Arch Linux has some other official kernels that you can download and use. That's another story. So Arch Linux will always follow these numbers, but sometimes Arch Linux, like for instance, this long-term kernel, 66.31, Arch Linux will be using this kernel, and they will put a -1 in there or a -2 in there, even though kernel archives have not updated the kernel or changed the kernel. Arch Linux might make a change in it and put a -1 or a -2. And I really don't know why they do that. I'm just guessing that there was something there that they needed to change to make it run better with Arch Linux. And I'm just guessing, of course. So like I was saying, I think that Arch Linux has a -2 here because probably somewhere a year ago, they realized that they needed to tweak something in Neofetch to make it work better with their system. And they tweaked it and they put a -2 in there. And they did it on May 19th, 2023, a year ago. Now, of course, I'm just guessing because I really don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just pure speculation. So if you know better and you think I'm wrong and you know better, let me know in the comments. But anyways, I'm getting off track. So my main point is this. Neofetch hasn't had an update in almost 4 years, and everyone was fine with using it until a month ago when they locked down this repository and closed it down. Now everybody has a problem saying you shouldn't use it, it's dangerous to use, you can get a virus, you have to switch. Now, before I go on, because I'm going to give you 2 alternatives, and before I go on with that, I do want to go to here. So what I'm going to do is open up a terminal. Now I could just do a mod key enter. That opens up my terminal, but I'm going to use my mouse. Open it up this way. And you know what? I'm going to make it a little larger. And what I want to do is Pac-Man. Now this is my real bare metal computer with Arch Linux and the awesome window manager. So what I'm going to do is Pac-Man -Q Neofetch. So we can see here, we're running the 710-2 that was changed a year ago. Now I could clear the screen. Let's try it again. Okay, there, we have it all on one screen now. Sorry about that. So we can see it's 7102. And it even tells you right here, look at this. The build date was 2020, October 2020. Now, if we go back to the archives, so you can see on the GitHub, they released this last version on August 2nd, 2020. So in Arch Linux, it's showing the build. This build was October 2nd, 2020. So what that means is that Arch Linux built or imported this last release of Neofetch into their system on Friday the 2nd, October 2020, 2 months after it was released in GitHub. Now you might be wondering, why is the install date showing March 2024? You know why? Because I formatted my hard drive and I did a fresh install of Arch Linux. That's why. So that's the case. So like I said, I'm still using Neofetch and I think it's safe to use it. Now, if you don't want to use Neofetch, there's another one you can use. And let's open up my terminal again. You could use FastFetch. Now, I did a video on this a month or 2 ago on FastFetch. And even in the thumbnail, I said, bye-bye, Neofetch. But I never stopped using Neofetch. I'm still using it. But you can use FastFetch if you have an Arch-based system. Now, FastFetch is not available in Debian-based systems. although, and it's not available as a FLAC pack, although you can get it in Debian, but you got to jump through some hoops. But in Arch Linux or an Arch-based system, you just type in sudo pacman s fast fetch and install it. Put your password in, and I put the wrong password in. You think I would know my password by now? And now it's going to reinstall it because I already have it installed. So I'm just going to say no. And I'm going to clear the screen and let's type in fast fetch. And there we have it. It's just like Neofetch, and actually it's faster. It loads faster than Neofetch, and it gives more information. It's fantastic. So if you don't want to use Neofetch and you're running an Arch-based system, you can install FastFetch. Easy peasy. Okay. Now, if you're running a Debian system, that's a different story. So let's go over to Debian. This is my Debian. Actually, it's not Debian. This is Linux Mint based on Debian. It's not based on the Ubuntu one. And the updates are finished, and I don't have to reboot because it didn't update the kernel. So let's close my terminal. And for some reason, this weather app doesn't get updated in the terminal. There might be a way to do it, but I don't know how to do it. So let's just update this here. We can get this icon to not have that red dot on it. Okay. Now it's working. Okay. Yeah, that weather app doesn't get updated when I do an apt update in the terminal, and I don't know why. It doesn't matter. So like I said, in Debian, there's a program you can use. It's a bash script. It's called ScreenFetch. And it's available in Debian and Debian-based distributions. And it runs just a little bit slow, and it doesn't have as much information as FastFetch. And it's still getting updated, so you can use that as an alternative. Normally in Debian-based distributions, I download stuff in the terminal. And actually, if you want to do that, you could just do this. You could do sudo apt install screen fetch. Let's just do it here. Okay. Put my password in. Hit yes. Let's install it. And we are installing screen fetch in Linux Mint based on Debian. You could do this in pure Debian or any other distribution that's based on Debian, and it's installed. Now, if you don't want to do it that way, you could just go to the Software Center, type in screen fetch, and there it is there. And like I said, when I'm in Linux Mint or pure Debian or MX Linux or any other, or Antex Linux or any other Debian-based distribution, I like to install things in the terminal. Anyways, so like I said, you can install screen fetch in the terminal or in the Software Center, the GUI Software Center. So let's clear the screen. Let's type it in, screen fetch. Now this opens a little bit slower, not a lot slower, and there we are. So it's showing I'm in Linux Mint 6 Fay. I'm running kernel 6.1. I have 2,134 packages. I'm running the bash shell because I didn't install my Zesh in here. Resolution is 1360 by 768. And now it's showing I'm running the GNOME desktop. I don't know why it's showing that, because I'm actually running the Cinnamon desktop. That's interesting. The window manager is Muff, and that's really interesting. And the font is Ubuntu 10. My disk is this, and so forth. My RAM is 1.2 gig out of 4 gigs of RAM. And that's interesting. Let's clear the screen. Let's run Neofetch. Neofetch. So Neofetch has it right. It's showing I'm running the Cinnamon desktop. Isn't that interesting? Okay, so I guess maybe it's not a great alternative. Now, the thing is that I didn't know it was going to do that. That's strange. So now if you're running Linux Mint, you could just go into here, type in info, and you have system info here. Let's click it on. And here, you can just go here. You don't even have to go into the terminal if you're running Linux Mint. So it's showing right here, the operating system is LMDE 6 FE. Cinnamon version is 6.0.4. The kernel is 6.1.0-21. The processor is Intel. The memory is 3.8 gigs. My hard drive is a 44 gig hard drive. And my graphics card is Virtual Red Hat Virtual GPU, and that's because this is a virtual machine that I'm running in Virt Manager within my Arch Linux computer. Okay, and the display server is X11. So you can just get information there. You don't have to go into the terminal. Now, like I said, that's a bit strange that screen fetch. I didn't know it was going to do that. Showing I'm running the GNOME desktop environment. That's odd. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little experiment. I'm going to clear the screen. I'm going to install the awesome window manager. Sudo apt install awesome. I'm going to put my password in. And let's install the awesome window manager. It's just going to take a moment to install. Maybe I'll pause the video. This video is getting a lot longer than I intended it to be because I went off topic and talked about some other things. But hey, what can I say? C'est la vie. And there we go. The awesome window manager is installed. So let's close the terminal. I'm just doing an experiment here. Let's log out of the Cinnamon desktop. Now remember, we're in Linux Mint Debian. And I'm going to click on this icon here. Install. Click on the awesome. I'm going to put my password in. And now we're in the awesome window manager. And I'm going to open up a terminal. And I'm going to type in xrandr s 1360 by 768. Okay, that's better. Now, of course, this is the default Debian configuration file for the awesome window manager. I don't have my personal awesome window manager configuration installed here. I could install it, but I've done that in many videos. And of course, this video is getting on way too long and I'm like way off topic because I'm supposed to be talking about Neofetch. Let's just open up the terminal. I just wanted to see what this is going to show. Screen fetch now. Oh, and look at that. So I'm in Linux Mint Debian and screen fetch is accurately showing that I'm in the awesome window manager. Isn't that interesting? How about that? So what I'm going to do is let's close that and let's get out of there. And let's go back to Cinnamon. This is interesting. Put my password in. And let's open up my terminal. Now we're back in the Cinnamon desktop environment of my virtual machine of Linux Mint Debian. Let's do a screen fetch. Hit enter. It's reading the Cinnamon desktop as GNOME. Isn't that interesting? How about that? Now, there is a way to install FastFetch in Debian. It's not available as a flat pack, but you have to go through some hoops, and I'm not going to show you. Okay? In this video, I talked about the end of Neofetch. and I explained why I'm going to still use it and why I think it's still safe to keep using it. I also showed an alternative for Arch Linux, which is Fast Fetch. And I showed an alternative for Debian-based systems, which is Screen Fetch, although it's working a little funny. And also in Linux Mint Debian, I showed you can just use the GUI to get your information by going to the Info app, okay? And of course, I went off topic a few times, and I showed a few other things in the terminal, and I went off topic. What can I say? I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like it, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching. Until next time, I am the Linux Mensch.